This video is brought to you by Straight Goods News, Canada's alternative online news source. Visit straightgoods.ca.
Well, under a piece of legislation that the government thought was close to a miracle not so long ago, less than a year ago, under the Balance Refugee Reform Act, what we agreed to in that act was an independent panel of experts. And I think that if you're going to start designating countries as safe, and by the way, I don't think we can say categorically that any country is safe, if you're going to do it, the power should not rest in the hands of the minister. It should be administered by an independent panel of experts so they can make a judgment.
The minister said that a high percentage of Hungarian claims, for instance, were rejected or withdrawn. What is the actual number? Because he said the number, that it depends on the number of people as well as the percentage. What is the actual most recent number of Hungarian refugee claims that were actually accepted by the IRB?
Last year alone, we accepted over 160. We're not talking about one or two here, over 160 using the measures that we use to allow for asylum seekers to be designated as legitimate asylum seekers were recognized. So when you have over 160 in 1 year, we're not talking about one or two. And even if it was one or two, it's still significant. The Asylum Seekers Convention is a convention that belongs to the United Nations that we're signatories to, and we're abandoning our obligations by putting all kinds of hurdles in the way.
In terms of ministers' ability to designate arrivals as irregular, is that still the most egregious and serious concern?
Well, when you look under equality before the law and the way we as Canadians treat people, I think it is one of the key pillars in this legislation that is so draconian that we have no choice but to vote against it. Designating people because of the way they arrive in this country as irregular is just not acceptable. And you know, under the Balance Refugee Reform Act, we have a process that we agreed to, all parties agreed to. And the government has a way of talking about this bill as if this bill is about catching smugglers. Let me tell you, there is nothing in this bill that will go after smugglers in a way that they're going to catch those international smugglers. This is really about punishing the most vulnerable citizens when they arrive here, putting their lives at risk, and when they get here, we're going to throw them in prison. And then for 5 years, even after that 1 year is up, for 5 years we're not going to give them any travel documents, and we're not going to give them residency documents, and they cannot even apply for their family members to come and join them. You can imagine it's going to take 8 or 9 years for family members to come and join them, because once they apply, then they have to join the queue.
A lot of people... The bill passes and it's expected to pass. Is Canada any less poor because of this? Have we lost any stature because of this?
In the international community, I believe this is another black eye for Canada. And I think as Canadians, when I've talked to Canadians around this country, I was in Kelowna recently where I was talking to a group, not exactly the hotbed of radical socialism, Kelowna that is. And even there, the comment I heard back was, this is not our Canada. This is not the Canada we want. And I think for us, it's very easy for us to start getting into, oh, well, these people just arrived here. Well, you know what? Nobody's arriving here. They're putting their lives at risk. When they're on that boat, or they're using other means to get here, they're actually putting their lives at risk. And they're escaping life-threatening situations. And when they get here, we're going to throw them in prison, and then we're going to put them through all these other hurdles. And this is not Canadian, and I actually think it goes not only against our charter, but international conventions we're signatories to. It seems to be a habit for Canada to break those.
And you just mentioned that violations to the charter, possible international law. Do you anticipate any court challenges in Canada or elsewhere as a result of this bill?
I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised. advised if there were challenges to this. Lawyer after lawyer through the committee stage came, and even the government's lawyers, witnesses, told us how we were opening ourselves up for a sea of litigation. But I also want to talk about the financial cost. To keep people in prison costs a lot of money, and that's what they would be going into, especially in BC, where we have no detention centres. Irregular refugees would be put in a regular provincial detention centre. So once they're in there's that cost, but I want us to think about the psychological cost and the social costs to our society when we treat the most vulnerable this way, and what integration into our communities is going to be like for them, and how their reception in Canada is going to colour their view of this country that they sought refuge in.
The minister